This is the Behind the Scenes Bulletin of the Seraphina Speaks for Children Who Think show. I'm your host, Seraphina Melina Durbin. Let's go right ahead to the bulletin, shall we? Hey, it's Seraphina, back with a Behind the Scenes Bulletin. As I recorded the main episode on Disney, I thought about the relationship between risk and safety. Disney has been criticised for so much in recent years. It had its 100-year anniversary coming up, and it must have been a mega big decision about which film to produce to celebrate that. A movie called Wish sounds like it could be a blockbuster success, except it wasn't. Here's host of the podcast Commotion, Elamin Abdelmahmoud, in conversation with Bill Jabiri, film critic for Vulture.
When I sort of think about the last few Disney films, they've just made like puzzling strategic choices. So I think, for example, about the fact that like Encanto went straight to Disney Plus, and then it became like the sleeper hit, that people were like, oh my gosh, I love this movie. Fair enough. It was a time in the pandemic when people maybe were not going as much to theaters. But then you have like Lightyear, and then you have Strange World, which were movies that they didn't really turn into events. I actually kind of like Strange World. Like it was at least a movie that took some kind of risk, Turning Red should have been a big theater moment, and then it was not a big theater moment. So they've been making some puzzling choices when I kind of look at the way that they've kind of approached these movies. And then you get to Wish, and Wish really should have been eventized more than any other Disney film. And it was like the least event, Disney thing of the year.
Well, and if you look at the reception to those films, you're absolutely right. I mean, Turning Red, Strange World, these are films that actually had some specificity, had some risk-taking to them, had some artistry to them. And then you look at Wish, and it feels almost like a response to the fact that those movies flopped, where, anything
like a return to safety.
Yeah, anything distinctive has been kind of washed out of it. I mean, think about it. You've got a movie about wishes, right? You've got a movie about a guy who hoards people's wishes. There's so much you can do with that. Yeah. Like, people wish for all sorts of crazy things. How about, 20 minutes of just showing us all the, you could do so much.
Some wishes could be funny. Like, imagine this movie with even like a small moment of humor. There was nothing.
Right. Yeah. And it's almost like they were kind of almost afraid to kind of take any risks. And as a result, sort of wound up with this really sort of bland thing.
Disney has gone bland. In its wish to tread carefully, has it swung too far? Has it become something and nothing because it threw all the elements in the movie pot that ought to have made a big success, but in the end it flopped? It appealed to not many people. There's a lesson there. If we hedge our bets, we risk everything. It's better to annoy some or many people, but those who really like something are big fans, loyal ones. There will always be people who question our puzzling choices. They can't understand why we do what we do, and when. Wish the movie is like that. Disney may need a rethink on what it's bringing. It's an amazing achievement to be at this point 100 years after the start of Disney. I mean, let's cut this super brand some slack. 100 years? That's quite the achievement. Which brings me to one of my own. You'll know I struggle immensely with some words. It's a cognitive thing linked to my dyslexia. To have to say Elamin Abdelmahmoud was a challenge I probably failed pretty well. Apologies to the host of Commotion podcast. At least it's practice for next week's final episode in this season, aptly called On Failure. Before I go, I have another special Disney correspondent. David Semanoff is Disney obsessed and an expert on it. One thing I've noticed about lovers of Disney is they talk. It's magnificent. I'm so lucky to have secured David to talk to us. Here he is answering my questions.
Hi, Seraphina Speaks. This is David Semanoff from New York, New York. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Ready to talk about all things Disney. So let's get started. So when did I become a Disney fan? That's a really hard moment to remember just because it's always been part of my life. I grew up with it. My room was decorated with different characters on the walls. I watched all the animated movies, new and old on repeat. We were fortunate enough to have yearly trips to Disney World, so it was just part of my DNA. I think it helped that my mom really loves it and my dad enjoys it as well. And I think they first went to the Disney World in 1975 or 76, so many, many moons ago. They would take my older brother, and then when I was born, I got added to this, mix, because that's what you do as a family. And, I was just there even a few months ago with my parents and my 16-year-old nephew, and it was fun to see my mom just giggle and light up on her first time riding Remy's Ratatouille adventure, which just goes to show you that, like, no matter when it's part of your life, it's still a fun part of your life and really does wonders for your mental health and all that fun stuff. But I think around the time I was 10 or 11 is when I really started to lean in to learn more about the parks and how Disney World was created and how they created rides and all that fun stuff behind the scenes that lets you understand more about what you're experiencing. And that's when I really got into it. And I think, me having the same birthday as Disney World, which is October 1st, but they're much, much older than me, makes me feel like we're almost cosmically connected. What captivates me about Disney, and that's why it's part of my life right now, is I think that general ability to tell a story, develop a backstory, to develop a future lore and future stories and how it's all tied together, whether it's you're looking at their animation or the stories you see in the parks. I think there's a reason why these stories get stuck in our head and we can watch a movie anytime it's on TV, or I know I can go back to the parks over and over again just because there's so much detail and small things that even now, having gone to the parks over 50 times, I'm still discovering things I may not have seen before or forgot I saw years ago and moments like that. And I think even now, the second you walk into that park, you kind of forget about the real world, which is part of what they're supposed to be doing. That's why you're going to Disney World, is to be in this world they've built, but you're immersed in the space. You're enjoying these little moments. You're seeing characters walk by. You have all these awesome cast members that are bringing this world to life for you. And now as I'm older, much older, 38 now, I get to do it my way and I have fun. I don't have to do everything each trip, but I can pick and choose the moments I know will be fun. And also at this point, I get to go with friends who have little kids that are experiencing Disney for the first time, or other adult friends that haven't been since they were a kid or their first time, and get to see them explore Disney for through their eyes, which is super fun, and watch them embrace the magic and become a little Disney nerd like all of us. And I think that's what still captivates me now. And the last question that Seraphina asked me to talk about was, what should Disney be doing next? My biggest hopes and dreams for the company and for Disney World. And that's going to be the hardest question to answer, because I think if you ask any Disney fan that, we'll all have different answers, because we all connected Disney a different way and we all want different things out of the parks. For me, I'm very nostalgic to those 90s when, Disney had shows all around, characters were everywhere. They made these moments and it made it so exciting. I think that's what sticks with me. And while they still do that today, it's not as impactful or as big. And it has a lot to do with some bigger things at play, like, they should be paying cast members a bit more because they need a bit better wage if we want to see these things come to life. More nitty gritty things. But I think they've been focusing so much lately on limited time food and drink offerings, designing some not so flattering merchandise and other small one-off things. And I think they forgot a bit about why we love Disney, and that's their storytelling ability, which is what I've answered before about how storytelling is so important to me there. If you look back in the archives and all the things that those parks have accomplished since they opened Disneyland in 1955, and how storytelling has been like their differentiation point from every other theme park, at least here in the US, I think that's what's missing, in the sense that they're relying too much on the younger generation's love for some of the movies and wanting to incorporate them into the parks, but doing it in an almost inauthentic way by just adding them on to certain attractions versus, there's a reason there's an orange bird. And if you don't know who that is, look it up. There's a reason why we love the country bears, and they're being reimagined, but they've developed all these characters for the parks that we've all grown to love. And I think they are missing out on this lovely younger generation who probably would love to see some new and exclusive items just for that park or for the park system, in addition to their favorite characters. And I think they're relying too much on that being what gets you to want to go to Disney World, versus you going as a young person and just enjoying what the creativity in front of you, because it just makes your mind go wow, and you get excited by watching all these things move around you and music and stuff you've never heard before. And that's what I think's missing, is these moments of newness that aren't related to a movie franchise. And I know you probably might hate me for saying that, but you won't know until you go on this trip, and then you'll realize, oh wow, these people were crazy and really fun and had a good idea, and you want to see more of that. So I think that's my biggest wish, is like getting back to the drawing board of how these parks were created, and really thinking beyond what we already know and bringing us new stuff that none of us have ever experienced before, no storylines we've ever known, no characters we've ever seen, and getting us excited to want to go see that again. So that's my goal and hope, and hopefully that includes a more fun time, because I want to keep going and going and going, and that's what's going to keep bringing me back, is keeping it fresh and new and honoring the past while being excited for the future.
I asked David for any tips he could give us on visiting Disney parks. He didn't fail to deliver.
So, Seraphina Speaks listeners, I've been asked to give some tips. This is always very hard, because I think tips are tailored for each family and each person going to the parks, because it really depends on what's your goal. What do you want to get out of this trip? Do you want to do everything? Do you want to do just the highlights? Do you want to just go for a bit and then shop and hang out at the pool? So it's very hard for me to pick 5, but here are some that are pegged more towards the first time goer. Maybe it's your first trip and you're not going to go for another 5-10 years. So here's my little recap of what I think you should be doing. Okay, tip number 1. I think like any good trip, no matter where you go in the world, do your research. Disney World is pretty much its own little country within Florida, for better or worse. So you really want to look to see what attractions are where, what characters are in which park, what shows you definitely want to see, what food or restaurants you want to try, and really make a game plan so you know in your bigger Disney World picture what's a must, what's that things you know you have to do, what are the nice to haves. If we do it, great. If not the end of the world, or what you can skip unless it's raining. I don't really want to do that thing. So being able to go into that trip in advance, knowing what's on your checklist, will always be much easier once you're there, because you're not scrambling. And part of this is also playing around with the Disney World app before you get there, just to get used to how to mobile order, how to look up directions, if you're using Genie Plus, how that system and what it looks like, and also making sure all your tickets are there, all those fun little things. So once you're in Florida, in Orlando, day 1, you're ready to go without any issues, and you have a nice, fun start to your trip. Tip number 2, now listen to me. This is kind of a hard one, only because you're not going to believe me, but just don't overwhelm yourself. I know you're going to want to do everything possible. You're going to want to see it all. It might be your first time, or you're not going to be there for a long time again, or you're so excited you just know you're not going to be able to sleep at all, but you're going to need a rest. You're going to need a break. So I would say definitely incorporate some time to go back to your hotel in the afternoon to relax, whether it's going up to hit the pool if the weather is nice, taking a quick nap, just refreshing, taking a shower, whatever you need to do, recharge, but then go back to the parks at night, because they're totally different at night versus the day. So I would definitely find a way to make sure you go back to the parks in the evening. But I know that's not always possible to go back to the hotel in the middle of the day. So then I would definitely recommend including some sort of sit-down dining experience around between 1 and 3 p.m. You won't realize how much you'll need that until afterwards, and you will be surprised at how much sitting down without being rushed can change your attitude and give you the energy boost you need. We all love a good quick service experience at Disney, but if you're able to book that lunch at a restaurant, you'll be so happy. And just know that in case you can't get a reservation in advance, I know that can be very tough, and that's one of the laboring parts about Disney World. I would say don't worry about it, because a lot of the restaurants do have openings that pop up the day before or even that day. You just need to be on the app and refresh, but it isn't impossible to get some of these tables. And a lot of them also have walk-up wait lists. If you're going at a not so busy time of the year, you can't get a reservation, most of them will open up a walk-up wait list too. That might be 15 to 20 minutes, which gives you enough time to be like, let's do this. We can walk there in time and have a good afternoon. So some sort of break, whether in the park or outside the park, I would highly recommend. Tip number 3 requires spending a bit more money than you thought you might spend. And this goes in line with just this overall theme of, if it's your first trip to Disney, you're not going to be going back for a few years after this trip. it's worth investing in Genie Plus in my eyes, because it saves up time as a family for you guys to go on rides without waiting in line, while using that time where you would be waiting in line to do something else and make sure you're getting the most out of your Disney World experience. But this can be up to $100 extra a day for a family of 4. So you have to think about that, budget that accordingly. You know, kids, maybe you find some little side hobby to bring some money to the Disney table and help your parents with this trip. And it makes you feel proudful for that as well. Instead of buying some toy you might lose, if you can contribute towards your Genie Plus attractions, you're going to love it even more. But in all reality, it's a necessary evil nowadays, I think. But one of the pluses is that with Genie Plus, you can only ride each attraction that's part of it once. They won't let you book it again. That's the way to make it fair for everybody and whatnot. But what's good about this, say there's a ride you know you love, or you're going to love. You haven't even ridden it yet, but you just rode it yet, but you know you're going to love it. But you're going to a busy time of year. But you're going to want to do it more than once. With Genie Plus, at least you can have that guaranteed window to walk onto that ride. And then maybe you do stand by a different time of day and do it again. So that's like a nice way to be able to guarantee you do a ride you love more than once. And also look at the system of, I'm going to do it again, but right now during the morning is when everyone's bright and alert. We want to ride it then. We're going to do Genie Plus. But now we're back at night. We're a bit more loosey-goosey with our plans, and we can go on it again. So just something to think about as you're planning. I think definitely incorporate it into your busier days, especially for Magic Kingdom or Hollywood Studios, where in Magic Kingdom there's a lot of rides, so you want to do the most. And at Hollywood Studios there's not as many rides, but they're all very popular. So you want to use that Genie Plus to your advantage to do as much as you can without spending most of your time waiting in line. Okay, tip number 4 is all around Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. This is one of my favorite coasters at Disney World. It's super simple, easy drops, but it goes fast. It's sidewinds, it's fun, good theming in Frontierland. So you're in a mine. Everyone always loves it. It's probably one of the best communal experiences you'll have at Disney World with these strangers you'll never see again, because not one person is unhappy on it. And if they are, it's usually a younger kid, and by their next trip, they're ready to go on it again. So that aside, it's one of my favorites. And one of my favorite times to ride it is during the fireworks at Magic Kingdom. So what I recommend is trying to do Magic Kingdom at least twice on your trip at night. I think the first time at night, you go and watch the fireworks from the proper location in front of the castle on Main Street, so you can see everything perfectly, all the fun stuff. You laugh, you cry, all the fun emotions Disney movies give you. It's like that, and heightened because you're in the park and everyone around you is singing along and having a good time. And the second night, you either, if you have Genie Plus, base it off that time. So if fireworks are at 8, book that Genie Plus from the 8 to 9 window if you can, or around that time. Or, if the wait's 30 minutes, then get in line at 7:30, 7:40, for example. So by the time you get on the ride around 8:05, the fireworks will have started, and they shoot them off from behind the Magic Kingdom, but closer to where Big Thunder is. So you'll be on this roller coaster, heading up the hill, going down a hill, and fireworks are going to be exploding all around you. And it's probably one of the coolest, most magical things you'll experience on your Disney trip. So again, this is only if you are able to see the fireworks properly once, then this is your second showing. So whether you're doing 2 nights, which is ideal, or if you're lucky enough in the summer, they sometimes do it twice in one night, the fireworks. So I would say do this trick during the first fireworks around 8 or 8:30, whatever time they do. And then at 11, go watch the fireworks proper in front of the castle, whatever that later time is, assuming you're allowed to stay up late and all that fun stuff. Because also that second time, it'll be less crowded in front of the castle, so you'll have even more fun. But either way, synopsis, if you're able to do Magic Kingdom twice in the evening, save one of those nights to try to ride Magic Thunder Mountain when the fireworks go off, and you'll love it. And tip number 5, which is probably the most vital and important tip and the hardest to follow, is to remember to have fun. I think everything I talked about probably sounds stressful, too much planning, and it can be. But if you just remember why you're there, who you're with, and the purpose of this trip is really just to enjoy Disney and embrace it all and soak it all in, and just remembering that you're there to have a good time and have fun, then that's all you need to worry about. And you can use these tips or not, but if you're just going there and remembering, hey, I'm at Disney World, let's have a great day, then that's gonna be the best tip ever, because often you'll see families just breaking down because they didn't do XYZ, or so-and-so's ice cream fell on the ground. But those things happen. But if you just take it back to reflect on where you are in that moment and what you're doing, and you start hearing the music in the parks and the people walking by, and you see Mickey or you see another character, and all those things just come together and you're like, oh yeah, I'm here to have a good time and have fun. I don't need to worry so much about all this other stuff as long as I'm having a good time. So I know it's easier said than done, but just remember you're there for Disney World. Like, enjoy yourself. I just want to thank Seraphina so much for letting me on her podcast. It's just so exciting to see the younger people of this world embracing technology and having platforms like this to share with their friends and their friends and their friends and beyond. So I really hope you love this episode all about Disney, which I think that's what this episode's all about. You know, I'm sitting here in New York recording, so I hope. And if you have any questions, get them to Seraphina. We can get them answered. And have a good trip if you make it to Disney World in the next couple of years. I hope you have a wonderful time. And just remember to have fun, as I mentioned before. And definitely eat too much food, have too much fun, buy too much stuff, and enjoy yourself.
Isn't David a mine of information? Now I really want to go to Disney World. I really do. Huge thanks to him for taking the time to come and give us his Disney love and so many tips. If you're enjoying Seraphina Speaks, please consider supporting the podcast by subscribing to my Substack to gain access to my exclusive digital library of bonus content and more. Put the word Seraphina Speaks Substack into your search engine and it'll come up. I write social commentary on ordinary topics we take for granted. It's an extension of this podcast. If you'd like to get more involved in this podcast, why don't you join my correspondent team? All you have to do is post a review for the show on your fave podcast app. Then take a screenshot and send it to me at seraphina@seraphinaspeaks.com. Then I'll be in touch with you about being on the show. Next week's episode is called On Failure. It's also the last episode of this season. What better topic to close on? Whether you try not to fail or embrace it as a given. I hope you'll join me. Until next time, keep questioning what you take for granted. This is Seraphina signing off. Take care. I hope you enjoyed this bulletin, everybody. If you like what you hear, click the subscribe button. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for all your support.